Hi, welcome everyone. In this webinar, we'll deal with 5 ways to work with emotions. The whole idea of this video was born from the graphic you see on the screen. It's a synthetic graphic representation of 5 key points for those who work with emotions, which shows different alternative ways to work with feelings, which professionals like psychologists, counselors, etc., each in his own way can use to their advantage. After creating this image, we shared it through different social networks like Twitter, Facebook, and our newsletter. And in less than an hour, more than 100 people asked to deepen the subject. So, we decided not to answer the questions one by one, but to make a brief video in order to answer the more frequently asked questions. This proved to be a good idea, since at this moment, now that we are recording this video, the requests have increased to 800. Before exploring the subject, let's better see what we mean when we talk about emotions. We're definitely talking about anxiety, anger, and depression. Thus, emotions that can be problematic or even become pathologic, of more draining emotions like stress, post-traumatic, and psychosomatic disorders, which are the ways in which all the expressed or non-expressed emotions can significantly influence our body in a circular dialogue between mind and body. We are also talking about resistance to changes. In fact, sometimes emotions can stop us from changing or improving ourselves. And also on the positive hand of motivation, which leads us to do and or to build something. All this is closely linked to the life-work relation. Therefore, it involves our whole life, and for this reason, a multiple approach, which means gathering, comparing, and studying opinions expressed by different professionals in this field, helps us develop and research this theme. We'll approach and deal with these aspects in an explorative way. In fact, at Real Way of Life, company founded by myself, Fabio Sinibaldi, and Sarah Achilli, we believe that widening our horizon and exploring new possibilities that derive from new sciences is essential to further develop, integrate, and improve what we already know. There are some excellent techniques, ranging from psychotherapeutic to mental and physical approaches, which can be improved and strengthened, and placed side by side with new tools and new methods. They can help us make working with emotions more effective. These methods, if put together in the right order, could become intervention strategies that maximize results. We want to go through and discuss some key points. Our studies look at different sciences, in particular to evolutionism, psychoneuroendocrinology, neurosciences, modern food and nutrition sciences, postural biomechanics, and its derived sciences, and transform them through further reasonings and research in ideas that can become effective tools for all professionals in the industry. The first aspect to consider is that there are 2 ways to activate emotions. This consideration derives from neuroscience and psychoneuroendocrinology studies, which showed us how the first type of activation is sensorial, bodily, fast, and unconscious, and takes place in only a few thousandths of a second, bypassing the logical rational system and sending messages directly from our senses to the amygdala, and to other deep structures that elaborate emotions, with significant and very rapid effects to our body, like these release of hormones, the acceleration of our heartbeat, and the activation of important answers. So since this type of activation is unconscious and fast, it's important to work on aspects such as perception, senses, posture, self-perception, context, and innate reflexes. In other words, on whatever activates rapidly. This gives us the possibility to intervene in different ways in dysfunctional behaviors, or at least it makes us aware of these aspects and widens the range of answers available. On the other hand, there is a second way, which is longer, mediated by thought, slow and conscious. In this case, it's important to work on aspects like logical and symbolic thought, on all the evaluation and decision-making aspects which people often link to problem-solving, while they have their own specific activation which starts in the prefrontal cortex and influences our emotional answer, tolerance, and how we experience emotions, and finally, awareness. It's important to remember that there are two ways to activate emotions, because often we tend to use just one of them, forgetting that it's the dialogue between the two that's really important, especially because there is a phenomenon called competition between actions. Based on which one of the two ways is activated, it's going to be more difficult to communicate with the other one. We need to reduce the competition between actions and keep in mind, in most cases, it's the sensorial, bodily, and fast way that activates first, while we should give the right space to both and or let our inner energies select the best option for us. The second aspect we're going to discuss is that there are two modalities to activate emotions. Here, we refer to the important studies carried out by Porges and to his polyvagal theory, therefore to the important role of the vagus nerve in activating emotions. Porges noticed that there are two spheres in the brain, a reception phenomenon that opens us to sociality and a reaction phenomenon that helps us attack, escape, freeze. Normally, there's an exchange between the two spheres. In fact, often the problem with controlling emotions arising when one excludes the other, like if there was an on-off situation. To us, it's interesting to identify the exchange between these two modalities and use it to move from the emotional on-off situation in which in a moment you feel desperate and a moment later you're calm, to a situation in which we can modulate emotions and that opens a wide range of possibilities of reaction. Comparative ethology proves this very well. In fact, if we think that our nervous system is similar to the one of most mammals, it's interesting to observe how animals like wolves or bears have different ranges of aggressiveness, while humans just 2 or 3. Therefore, knowing how this system works helps us reactivate those different possibilities in our patients. Another point is represented by emotional triggers. We have seen how every emotion is activated by a specific mechanism. Fear starts when we consider a situation as dangerous, rage and aggressiveness when we feel a sense of invasion, etc. It's important to be aware of how these ancestral triggers work, especially because they dialogue with more evolved triggers. Thus, it's important to reflect on the subjective sensitivity to the different triggers and possibly reduce and not pull them. It'll be interesting to develop competences and resources to allow us to manage these triggers in a constructive way, especially for the evaluation mistakes our minds can make when we put first the hyperlogical elaboration and give less importance to our emotional answers, which instead would be way richer. We need to distinguish between facing a situation, a more active situation, and tolerating a situation, a passive situation, and reactivate in our interlocutors a more active behavior, which brings advantages and allows to reprogram the first type of activation we saw in the first point, the faster and unconscious one, which can be modified by what we experience. There's also a correct level and action timing, which helps us understand in which phase the emotion we are, and if we should intervene or just let our bodies have their natural cycle, something that can influence mental and bodily aspects. For example, sometimes the stock of cortisol, excessively under stress, generates other damages and leads to ineffective mechanisms and behaviors, like skipping meals, that may lead us to putting on weight, being more aggressive, react badly, lose control of our breathing, or other unpleasant situations which could be solved in advance. Lastly, there is a problem-solving level that helps us realize what a particular emotion, positive or negative, can do to us and how to reorganize it in order to better organize and improve the emotional system. Going back to physiology. Like all mammals, we are programmed to use emotions only in certain situations, but of course this doesn't always happen. In fact, there's a phenomenon which we call frame shifting, that consists in shifting an emotional answer from the normal frame of reference, according to which we tend to get used to the different stress stimuli we experience. This doesn't always bring advantages. In fact, we might not be able to feel the wrong position of our diaphragm and not understand that we are breathing badly. Chronic anxiety could lead to cervical arthritis, and so on. If we become unable to feel the in-between steps that lead to these situations, we'll realize we're not well only when it's too late. Frame shifting can also be activated by input phenomena. In a way, bringing the Cartesian axis of our sensorial perceptive system back to its original function allows us to better make evaluations. Something similar is proved by the allostatic load theory, even if on a more biological level. In fact, this theory shows how tolerance increases in the adaptation to negative changes and, often, carries negative consequences. On the long term, it can even influence our psychosomatic structure, modifying the structure of our veins and capillaries, changing the structure of our nervous system by modifying links and connections, killing some of them, and reducing the size of the hippocampus under prolonged stress. Of course, this is something we want to avoid, and being aware of the mechanisms behind its functioning can definitely help us. Going back to physiology also means understanding the different individual levels of adaptation to problematic situations, finding the best solution, and possibly avoiding to pull the trigger. The last point regards the possibility of an action on more levels and on more points, which results implicit if we consider all the elements we've seen. This time we'll make an example based on a specific area of competence. If we feel rage and aggressiveness, it's extremely important to intervene at a neurological level, exploiting the power of the biological feedback in our favor. When we get angry, we tend to have a common postural behavior. Intra-rotate our shoulders and bring our arm and hand forward in front of our stomach. This rotation allows us to protect our bowels from a possible enemy. We can either be subject to this biological feedback, or we can become aware of it, open our shoulders, maintain this new position for about 2.5 to 3 minutes, and obtain an inverse feedback, leading our body to send signals to the brain saying that the situation is okay and that the emotion can be reduced. Other important aspects are epigenetics, linked to evolutionism, which shows us how our early experiences influence our answers, and bodily maps, which instead show how, when an emotion like anger is activated, a very small substance inside the amygdala evaluates the possible physical pain, where we'll feel it and how much it'll hurt, and how this leads to choosing one or the other behavior, or instead to a somatization process. We can also intervene at a relationship level. In fact, rage can be activated when there is little trust, when a situation is delegated, or when the attachment system is attacked, which is the system of reference for our relationships. So, exploring what went wrong and how much of that depended on the insecurities of the person or on the behavior of the other is very useful, especially to transform in a constructive manner the way future relationships will be developed or to remodel current situations. Other aspects on which we can intervene are ethological. In fact, as humans, we have heard nonverbal communication modalities and behaviors, especially for what concerns competition and challenges. We should use them actively and consciously to change the way we live and signal our emotional answer to other people. It's important to note that we give more importance to competition, challenges, cooperation, or other themes when we feel deeply involved, not just when we like something, but when we feel the need to do better, to determine something in a relationship, etc. Finally, there is a biochemical aspect that naturally modulates all our answers. For example, we can identify foods that can increase or reduce emotional reactions. In the case examined, we know that animal proteins have the power of strengthening rage. So if we want to work on this type of emotion, we could start reducing meat consumption. At this point, I'd like to thank you for listening. I hope with this video to have, even if only partially, made this difficult theme a bit clearer. Here we have discussed only 5 ways to work on emotions, but we have actually developed an 8-step protocol. So if you'd like to learn more about this theme, click the following link and find out about the program and dates of our future courses. Since these themes can be applied on emotions or on other fields, we have also realized different courses to work on specific topics: psychosomatic, changes, habits, trauma, etc. Click the following link to learn more about the program. Having said this, I thank you for your time and interest. If you'd like to receive other videos, articles, and research results, please visit our website and blog and subscribe to our newsletter. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and watch videos of conferences or webinars on our YouTube channel.